Let's begin the class today. Jaziel, he were uh, carried by Ireneu of Crotona to a place where Ireneu thought he could be received, he could have his illness treated, because there were there were some men that were the men of the way, as were called the first Christians, that were reunited in a place in Jerusalem. When Jaziel went there, he was, Emmanuel says to us, marveled at such affability and politeness. And he had listened that he was called as a brother by men that he has not seen in the life. He thought this was a very impressive thing, and he asked to this man, "Why do you call me brother?" And the elderly man answered, "We are all one big family in Christ Jesus." Who could be this Jesus? A new God? Jaziel think has thinked. Jaziel answered simply, "May God reward you for your generosity. I have come from Cephalonia. I was I was taken badly ill, and I appeal to your charity in this condition." So Irineu has taken him to a man that was called Ephraim. Ephraim remarked, "You are not the first. The day before yesterday, another one arrived with his body covered in nasty sores. I intend to take him to Jerusalem later. Is all right? We are in the right position now?" Okay. Ephraim is explaining that only going to Jerusalem, where they have more people working in the initial work of Christianity, that they could treat those two men, Jaziel and the other that was there ill with him. Only there do we have a larger number of helpers. "You shall go with me," Ephraim said. At dusk, at dawn, taking advantage of the fresh evening air, a cart carefully covered by cheap canvas left Joppa for Jerusalem. We've seen that Joppa is the port that from which people went to Jerusalem. Only on the following morning did the cart stop at the door of a large rundown house. Ephraim asked him familiarly, "Uriah, could you tell me if Simon Peter is in?" "Yes, he is," the young man said. "Simon, came accompanied by James, brother of Levi, and received the visitor with effusive displays of kindness. This is going to be a big problem, said James. We already have 49 patients abed. Peter smiled kindly and replied, the Master, Jesus, has entrusted us with the work of giving assistance to all his suffering children. Right now, our time is meant for that. And the kind apostle approached to receive the two sick men. Ever since he had come from Tiberias to Jerusalem, Simon had been at the center of the great humanitarian movement. So you see, after Jesus had died, uh, he appeared to the apostles in Jerusalem, and then he went to Galilee, where there is Tiberias, that is the Sea of Galilee. Yeah, and when Jesus went to the higher places, to the spiritual world, uh, Peter had with the first Christians come to Jerusalem. And then, Emmanuel says, he had been the center of a great humanitarian movement. And Emmanuel tells us a very interesting thing. The philosophers of the world had always pontificated from comfortable cathedrals, but had never descended to the plane of personal action alongside the most unfortunate, setting a divine example. Jesus had revamped the entire system of preaching virtue, calling himself the afflicted and the sick. He inaugurated on earth the formula of true social benevolence. The first organizations of assistance were established by the apostles, efforts in response to the loving influence of the master's teachings. So you see, uh, in the past, from 2000, 3000 years before, you had some assistance to widows, to children, isolated assistance, and some points given by the public power. For example, in Mesopotamia, the cities, uh, uh, the temples in the city, they have the grains, the wheat, the rice. I don't whatever. With they redistributed this food to people, and sometimes given food to the more necessitated. But it was not an organized movement as initiated by Christianism. Jesus Christ, he was really a mark in the history because before him there was not this fraternal uh, consideration of uh, imagining that one person that is near me deserves the same assistance that my brother of blood. You see, for example, the civilian rights, they were restricted to few persons, to few people. You see, Greece, that was the place where democracy had begun, the cradle of democracy. You have there in Greece, in the classical period, for example, we say the fifth century before a Christian era, we had only 20% of the population voted in the polis, that was the square, we say the place where the public attributions were defined. Only 20% of people discussed and voted there. Women didn't vote, children didn't vote, and a great part of the people that was enslaved, we say the slaves, they didn't vote. They were not considered as people, but as things. After the Christianism, we have this concept of having all people equal one to another. This was totally different from the what the Roman Empire was telling to the people of the way the Roman Empire ruled his uh, provinces. Only in the Illuminism in the 17th century, it's that we have something that tells as a new movement, that is the Illuminism, that is telling that humans are all equal because they have the dignity of a human being. We see that in the Christianism, the equality is preached by Jesus because we are son of the same God. In the Illuminism, it's different. They say by the because the human have a rational part, and this rational part give him light. It's because it's this name. It's called Illuminism, and by the light of reason, all men deserve the same rights. And this is very new, the movement that is the Christianism in the beginning. Setting a divine example, Jesus had revamped the entire system of preaching virtue, calling himself the afflicted and the sick. He inaugurated on earth the formula of true social benevolence. We repeat it and we will go on. The first organizations of assistance were established by the apostles' efforts in response to the loving influence of the master teachings. And Peter's residence, donated by a group of friends of the way, was overflowing with the sick and the hopeless, forsaken, elderly, insane, paralytic children, all attracted by the fame of the Nazarene prophet who had raised the dead and knew how to restore peace to the hearts of the world's unfortunates. Of course, not everyone could be healed, which forced the former fishermen to shelter all those in need with the care of a father. So you see, they began to receive a lot of people. Many regained their health again, but uh, another part of those people didn't uh, uh, re, regained their health, or there were children, there were orphans, there were elderly without places to go, and living there with his family. Peter was at first helped particularly by James, son of Alphaeus, and by John, son of Zebedee. So we have here James, John, and the other that he will tell us, Philip and his daughters also came there to Jerusalem, assisted assisted in the great fraternal endeavor. So great was the number of the needy of all sorts that Simon had been unable to involve himself with his other task of preaching the good news of the kingdom. Peter had been forced to rely on the help of the most noteworthy members of the city, thereby feeling more and more a slave of his benefactors and his impoverished beneficiaries as they arrived from all over. So Peter had the problem that he, that was an apostle, a direct disciple of Jesus, he could not tell of the most important thing, that was the good news that Jesus has brought to the humanity. And he was more and more not only involved with this material care to those people, then dependent of rich Jews from Jerusalem and other Christians that lived there. In response to Ephraim's trusting request, Peter arranged for both patients to stay at his poor house. You remember, James has said, we have 49 people. This is as a mother heart, where we have uh, ever a place for another son. Jaziel, that was ill, occupied a simple clean bed, completely unconscious in the delirium of the fever. His incoherent words, however, gave evidence of such a precise knowledge of the sacred texts that Peter spent long hours listening to him, and took note of his profound ideas. So, as he was in delirium, Jazel, Peter was impressed because he knew deeply the old texts of the law. After 2 exhausting weeks, Jazel's health had improved and he was able to reharmonize his thoughts. And now begins a very moving relaxation. Noticing Peter's care in going from bed to bed, from one patient to the next, the young man, Jazel, experienced an inner delightful surprise. The still relatively young as fisherman was the living example of selflessness. This was not common. Jazel soon was transferred to the amenable shade of the large date palms surrounding the old house. The magnetic current of the great affective friendship had been established between Peter and Jason. On this particular morning, Peter said with a jovial smile. So now we begin a new part of this history. Anyone would like to tell anything?
I think even nowadays, it's really difficult to find this kind of benevolence, right?
Yeah.
Receiving sick people in your own house,
Mhm.
sharing everything you have with people that you don't know. Even nowadays, after so many years of Christianity and the charity, we know so much today. And it's
Mhm.
still so difficult to find this.
Mhm.
Just the idea of that happened in the past. I can't express how beautiful and a little bit shame on us this is. Right?
Uh, so, Peter begins to talk to Jaziel. Now that God has restored your precious health, I am delighted at having received you in my house. When you were delirious with the high fever, I was so impressed with your references to Isaiah that I would like to know which tribe you descend from. So Peter uh, knew that Jason was Jude. Jason understood that his sincere friend wished to know him better and to identify him intimately and deeply through delicate psychological subtlety. So Peter uh, began to touch the personality of Jaziel with this delicate asking, and Jaziel answered, "My father was a son from the environs of Sebast and was descended from the tribe of Issachar," said Jaziel attentively. Isaiah has always impressed me deeply because of the beauty in announcing us the Messiah. The Messiah. Messiah, it's an Hebraic word that's called in Hebraic Messiah, but it calls us the idea of a person that was waited for the Jews that would restore the greatness of the Jew people and that would bring the message of God to the man. The Messiah was waited, and Jazel was delighted in reading Is- Isaiah because he's the one who tells about many characteristics of this Messiah. Simon Peter smiled happily with lively succession and said, "But you don't know that the Messiah has already come?" "What do you mean?" Jesus answered. "Haven't you heard of Jesus of Nazareth? Although the although he vaguely recalled Ephraim's words, because Ephraim has said about Jesus before bringing Jaziel to the house of Peter, he declared, "No, I haven't." And Simon Peter eyes lit, became full of light. He spoke to Jaziel about what the Lord had done, sketching a perfect oral biography of the sublime master. In dashes of living color, Peter recounted the days when he had sheltered Jesus in his hovel, in his humble house on the shore of Gennesaret. Their journeys to the neighboring villages, their boat trips to Capernaum, to places along the shore of the lake. You see, Peter, he lived in the Gennesaret Lake, and specifically in Capernaum. Peter displayed inexpressible emotion in his voice and his inner joy at recalling Jesus' deeds. The apostle's lively imagination was able to weave judicious and shining commentaries as he recalled a leper who had been held, a blind man who had recovered his sight, a little sick child instantly restored to health. When Simon seemed about to finish his story, Jaziel could not contain himself. And the Messiah, where is this Messiah now? Over a year ago, he was crucified right here in Jerusalem between two thieves. Peter thereupon began to enumerate the poignant sufferings and heart-rending ingratitude of which the Master had been victim, and his glorious resurrection on the third day. Then He spoke of the first days of the apostolate, the events of Pentecost, and the final appearances of the Lord in Galilee. Jesu's eyes were in tears, linking the Master's profile to the passage he knew by heart. He spoke as to himself. He will rise like a tender shoot in the ingratitude of an arid soil, and rejected by men, humiliated and afflicted. He will be led like a lamb. But from the moment he offers his life, he will the will of the eternal will prosper in his hands. You see, um, Jazel was a person with an acute perception of what was written in the scriptures, because the Jews waited for a man who conquered the other civilizations, the Romans, the Greeks, a man that had a military power. But we see that he knows, Jazel, that by the evolution of the story of the Jews, that had brought to that people, to the Jews, suffering to endure him, to live in bad situations, to give importance to the human beings and not to the material things. He began to understand that Jesus perfectly paralleled to the prophecies that testified about him. It's not a common thing. Peter must have been very surprised. Okay? Oh, that's what he said. Simon, surprised, ended by saying, I am going to bring you the notes by Levi. People, a final question here. Uh, we will begin in the next class from here, because we will tell about how were written the Gospels: Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. Yes, about the theories that are today telling of how they were written, and what Emmanuel says about the beginning of the Christians, and what really happened to bring us these Gospels. Aline, Grace, Frank, would you like to tell, to answer, to ask, to say about what was written, what was read, what was read?
No, I just think it's very nice what you just said, because now when you think about the story of the gospel, I think one class will be not enough.
Yeah, yeah,
But it's I I think that Giziel was mature even before he met Peter. So he has the gospel inside him, even
yeah,
though he doesn't know the gospel and
yeah,
yet. So it is this is very beautiful for me and very touchable that we can have that kind of feeling. And it's like he knew Jesus before to know Jesus.
Yes. He is given spoiler because he has heard about that. Okay, Grace. Uh, but there's no problem. That's very welcome. Jaziel, uh, we see at this moment, he's now coming to Jerusalem after all the sufferings, after he has lost his father, after he has lost the place where Abigail, his sister, is, and a new part in this story begins to us. We can be finished here. Frank have said something. We can say then that Jesus started the concept of charity. Yes, Frank, we can say that he said he started the organized concept of charity. He began.
Was me. I wrote in his profile.
Ah,
Sorry.
yes. It's because it's there.
Yeah.
So, yeah, Jesus, you say, he began to to do good things, to make good things to many people. Yeah, but the apostles, as Jesus were not more between them, they had to organize themselves to make as they could the good things to the most necessitated people, as Jesus have taught. Jesus could heal blind, but they weren't able to healing, to have all that marvelous things that Jesus do so frequently. Yes. So with the apostles that Emmanuel says to us, it has begun the organized charity. Yeah. So thank you very much. Today was shorter.
Yeah, but beautiful as always. So we thank you, August, for the beautiful class, and thank you for.
That I'm not teaching. I We are dividing our impressions. Really,
Okay,
you
so
have
for the
you have
beautiful study, it's
yes
better.
our study.
Yeah. So you are teaching because we learn a lot through you. So from you.
So do
So
you. So do you.
this is a great opportunity to us. We thank everybody that is watching, and we're gonna rise our raise our thoughts to Jesus, to the spiritual world, to the spiritual friends, and we thank them for this peaceful time, this wonderful time where we could back to Jerusalem and imagine Jesus meeting Peter and the other apostles. We thought back about how hard it should be for them practicing what Jesus taught us. And nowadays, even though with so many easy times, we still be very difficult to practice what He has taught us. Thank you, Jesus, for the night, for this week that has just begun. Stay with us, oh Lord, during every day of our lives. So be it. So thank you very much, everybody. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night. See you on Monday.